Hey there, and welcome to another HOI4 modding lesson on the Iron Workshop. In this lesson, we'll be learning again how to create states in HOI4. Now, the reason that I'm remaking this lesson is because some things have changed quite significantly in HOI4, especially after the No Step Back update. And also the previous lesson was done in the old format and left some things out, especially concerning the nudge tool and various effects it might have on your game. And also some things have also changed about the nudge tool, which make this process a little bit easier. So it makes sense to reintroduce the steps on creating new states in this new environment that we find ourselves in. So with that said, let's roll the intro and start with the lesson. Alright, let's get started. So in step number 1, we'll need to create a new mod and enable debug mode in the game in order to access the nudge tool. If you don't know how to do these things, please check the videos that I have linked to in the upper right corner of the screen. They should explain how to do these things, and once you're done, we can proceed to step number 2, creating our new state using the nudge tool. In step number 2, we will be creating our new state using the nudge tool. So I already have HOI4 open in here, and I have the nudge tool available since the game is in debug mode. So let's go ahead into the nudge tool.
Alert, alert, nudge tool activated, game destruction imminent, alert, alert.
Whoa, calm down HOI4. I know that the nudge tool can be a dangerous tool when used incorrectly, but if you follow this lesson carefully, everything should be fine. If you experience any issues, at the end of the lesson, I will talk about how you can solve these issues to make sure that your game is not corrupted and you can keep on using it. Alright, let's continue. So in order to create our new state, we will need to click on states in the upper right panel in here. And for the purpose of this lesson, we will be dividing Texas into 2 states, since in the vanilla game, Texas is only made up of 1 state, and that is a bit weird, so let us add more states to Texas. So to create my new state, I will first need to click on a province, which I want to belong to my new state. And after I've clicked it, I need to hold the Shift key on my keyboard, and then click on the province again. Just like this. This takes this state out of Texas and creates a new state instead of it. Now we need to give our new state a name, so we will just call it something like New Texas. And then we can click the Create State button. Alright, so the nudge tool has created our new state, and now we just need to assign more provinces to this state. So while this province is selected, I'm going to hold the Shift key on my keyboard, and I'll just start clicking on states that I want to belong to New Texas. Just like this. Let's just make it pretty. Okay, so now New Texas controls all of these states, and we can click on Save in order to save these changes. Now, this is an improvement that's actually been done to the nudge tool. Previously, when you clicked Save, it would revert to an old state. So that was a bit weird. But now it seems to be working fine, and this is a really nice fix to the nudge tool. Alright, so our new state has now been created and it has all the required provinces. But in order to make sure that it works properly in the game, there are a couple more steps that we need to take, which brings us to step number 3. In step number 3, we will need to assign strategic region to our new state. In step number 3, we need to assign a strategic region to our new state. So let's go back into HOI4. Now, the thing about strategic regions is that they're not automatically assigned to new states that you create. So let's click in here in the upper right panel on strategic regions. And we now see that our new state of New Texas does not have a strategic region. So the process of assigning it a strategic region is very similar to how we assign provinces to our new state. I'm going to click the Southwest strategic region. I'm going to hold the Shift key on my keyboard and then just click on New Texas. And now New Texas is part of the Southwest Strategic Region. Of course, we'll need to click on Save in order to save these changes. Alright, now we can proceed to step number 4. In step number 4, we will be fixing the building sprites. So once again, let's open the nudge tool. And the thing about buildings is that when you create a new state, your new state does not have any building sprites. Building sprites are the 3D graphics of buildings that you see on the map. And if I were to zoom into New Texas in here, you will see that there are no buildings. On top of that, there is another issue. The game doesn't really realize that the new state has been created, so it tries to assign the buildings that were in Texas into this new state, and that creates a lot of conflicts because the buildings that it thinks that are a part of Texas are no longer a part of Texas, they're a part of New Texas. But the game still tries to place them there, and that creates a whole load of problems. So whenever you create a new state that was taken out of an existing state, you need to fix buildings for both states involved in order to make sure that all buildings sprites are assigned correctly. So let's go ahead and do that. As you have seen, I've clicked on buildings in the top right panel here. I will select New Texas and I will click on Random in State. And this creates all the required buildings for this state. Now, in order to make sure that everything is correct, I would also highly advise you to click on Validate in State. This makes sure that no buildings that should not be there are created, and just make sure that all the code is correct. Next, because New Texas was created out of Texas, I will also need to fix the buildings in Texas. So I'm going to click on the Texas state, and I'm going to once again click on Random in State and Validate in State. And you see that it created these naval supply hubs in the sea, which weren't there before because it wanted to put them in New Texas. All right, now I'm just going to click on Save, and our buildings have been saved. Next, we'll talk about fixing incorrect state data. In step number 5, we will be fixing the incorrect state data, which is created whenever you create a new state. Now, the reason for this is because the nudge tool doesn't really properly transfer all the information from the old state to the new state, so some things which belong to the new state are left in the old state. And hopefully this is not too confusing. Now, I will be closing HOI4 at this point. We don't really need it anymore. And we're going to open the HOI4 mod folder. I have it open in here. And in here I have the folder of my mod. However, my files are not there yet. They're actually in the HOI4 folder. So that's Documents, Paradox Interactive, HOI4. And in here you will see that the game has created a couple of new folders. First of all, we have the map folder, the localization folder, and the history folder. So we will need to copy all of these folders into our own mod. Now, the best way to avoid any issues is to actually cut these folders out of here instead of copying them, because then the game will not be using the information in these folders instead of the information that has been moved to the mod. The thing about the nudge tool is that whenever you make any changes there, they are saved in here. They're not saved in the base game folder, and they're not saved in your mod folder, the mod that you created by default. And that means that even if you uninstall the game, which is located in the Steam folder, any changes that you have in here will persist, and they will continue to be used by the game whenever you launch the game. Because this is like a temporary waiting folder which the files are moved to in order to be moved to a proper mod folder. And this is what's usually causing issues with the base game and renders it unusable even if you have reinstalled the game in its base folder. But we will talk more about this in the last section of this video. Right now I'm going to grab these three folders and I'm going to use the cut option. I'm going to go into the mod folder, open my new states mod folder, and just paste. All right. Now, as we've said in step number 5, we need to fix some incorrect state data. So I'm going to open the history folder, states, and I'm going to open both of these files in Notepad++. All right. So we have our new Texas state, that is the state that we've created, and we have Texas. Now, a couple of things that you will notice here is that we have the provinces assigned to each state. And the nudge tool does a good job of moving these between the states, so you shouldn't have a problem in most cases where provinces are left in the incorrect file. However, if we take a look here, we'll see that Texas has a victory point that's assigned to this province number. And if we take a look carefully here, we'll see that this province has been moved to the new Texas state, which means that in here it is no longer valid and it shouldn't be in this file, it should be in this file. So let us move this victory point entry into new Texas. Now you will notice that victory points are under history. So first of all, we will need to create the history entry in our new Texas state. So let's go ahead and do that. And now I will move the victory points. I'm pressing Ctrl+X on my keyboard to cut it out of here, and we'll move it into the history section of our new state. That should be all of them. If you want to make sure if there are any victory points that don't belong in here, you can just double click the victory point province number, and Notepad++ will highlight that number if it exists here in the provinces. If it exists, good. If it doesn't exist, that means that you need to move it to the other state file. Alright, so I'm going to save both files. Another thing that the nudge tool doesn't do well is moving the buildings entries as well. So in here we also have a couple of buildings that no longer belong in the Texas state since they are a part of the new Texas state. And I can once again check if these buildings belong just by double clicking this number and seeing if these provinces actually appear in here. So this one seems to be fine. How about this one? Well, 6785 doesn't actually appear in here. So that tells me that it should move to the new Texas file. So let's once again select it and we'll move it in here. Now, please make sure to move it correctly, because if I move it like this, this will not work. The entry for the naval base is under buildings. So I will need to create the buildings entry under history, like this. And then make sure that my naval base is under buildings. So this should do just fine. Excellent. Let's once again save both files. Now, another thing that the nudge tool doesn't do well is copy the owner and any cores that the state might have to the new state. And it kind of makes sense because the nudge tool can't really know if you want to give this state to the same country. But I think it would be nice if it would do that by default and then you can change it later. But that's besides the point. The thing is that we will need to assign the owner and any cores and claims that the state has manually. So let's do that. I'm going to copy the owner entry to New Texas in here. And I'm also going to give the core to the United States as well. Now, one important thing about this is that if you created a new state and it doesn't have an owner, it might actually crash when you click it if it has any railways and hubs. So you will need to remove those before you start the game if you want that state to be ownerless. And this is a concept that's actually used extensively in mods like Old World Blues. They have a lot of states that aren't actually owned by any country, and that's fine and it can work. You just need to make sure that there are no railways and hubs in that state, because then the game doesn't know who to give that ownership to and it could definitely crash your game. So make sure to fix that. I have a separate lesson on how to deal with hubs and railways, So go ahead and check that in order to see how to fix it. Alright, so we have fixed the incorrect data of our new state, and we can now proceed to step number 6, adding the missing state data. In step number 6, we will be adding the missing state data. So what do I mean by missing state data? Whenever you create a new state, the nudge tool doesn't really know how to assign it values on different things like manpower and the state category. So you can see here that my manpower is currently 0, which in game terms basically means that nobody lives in this state. So this is one thing that you should fix, because it also tends to generate an error in the error log telling that nobody lives in the state. So let's just assign it some kind of a random number, whatever. Another thing that you should fix is the state category. And if we go to Texas, you see the syntax, the code in here, state category. So we can just copy this one in here and put it in here. If you want to see all the possible state categories, you can find them in the vanilla game files. So let me just show you where they are. HOI4 common state categories, state category. And in here you have all the possible categories. Now I would recommend that you do not copy the names of the files themselves, but open them and then just copy the category from here. So for example, if I want a city, I just put it in here like this, and now this state will be considered a city state category. Alright, so we've fixed the manpower, we've fixed the state category, and our state is basically done and can be used in the game. Now let's go into the game and see if everything works. Alright, so this concludes creating new states in HOI4 Revisited. In the last section of this video, I will talk about how to fix persistent map errors. These are the errors that you get when you start the game, and it tells you that the map is incorrect and that starting the game will crash the game. And it could happen in case you skipped a step or you did something incorrectly. And it is something that a lot of people encountered with the previous video, so I would like to tackle that. If everything is fine in your game, you can definitely skip this section. Thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, if you found it helpful, please give it a like so that others can see it as well. Subscribe to the channel for more modding videos, and I will see you in the next one. Bye bye. In this section, we're going to talk about how to deal with the fail to load the map error, which some of you may get after using the nudge tool following this lesson, or maybe if you've used it in some other context. Now, this error tells you that the game has an issue with the map, and usually it is caused because there is some information about the map that the game is using, and that data is incorrect. If you're encountering this issue after using the nudge tool, that means that the nudge tool has written some information to the HOI4 documents folder, and it is trying to use that information, and obviously the information is incorrect, and that is why you're getting this error. So how do we fix this error? Let me just close this message. In order to fix this problem, we will have to open the HOI4 documents folder. Now, this is very important. This is not the folder where your game is installed, which is why if you reinstall the game, the problem will not go away, because all of this is stored elsewhere, not where the game is installed. So make sure that you're doing the following steps in the correct folder. And that folder is located in Documents, Paradox Interactive, HOI4. Now, for Windows 10 users, I've seen a lot of cases where people are going to the Documents folder that is part of the OneDrive folder. And that is a super annoying issue about Windows 10, because I can totally understand how that can be confusing, because Windows creates this mirror image of all of these files. So it looks very similar, but it is a different location entirely. And doing the following in the OneDrive folder will not fix your issue. So make sure that you go to Documents, which are not inside the OneDrive folder, but just Documents. So Documents, Paradox Interactive, HOI4. After using the notch tool, it is most likely that the game will create some folders in here. And there are a lot of folders in here, but we are only concerned with a couple of them. The folders that I would recommend that you delete in order to fix this issue are history and map. So select these folders, delete them from here, and now restart your game and see if that fixed the issue. So as you can see, deleting these folders from the documents folder has fixed the issue for me. Now it is possible that you might be encountering this issue because you have some kind of a mod running which has its own map issues. So make sure that no mods are activated when you're trying to launch the game, and you should be fine. If you're still encountering any issues, please let me know in the comments. I'll do my best to help you. Thank you again for watching this video. I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.